everybody. It's been a bit of a slog with the way the weather's been and a few little things going on, including losing one of my adjuster bolts out of the tripod this afternoon and something else which we'll go into later. But this is Webley Mark II, and so what? It's a snow Himalayan. You're right, it's a snow Himalayan. It's exactly the same, near enough, as every other snow Himalayan on the planet probably, well certainly in the UK. Okay, there are some differences for other countries. So, is there anything different now as standard from Webley Mark I? Bear in mind, this one here is 18 months newer. Well, I've only found one thing really, looking at the handbook, and that is now you've got a low fuel light. The little pump symbol on the fuel gauge glows up at about 3.5 litres of juice left. I haven't seen it come on yet, because I've only done just over 21 miles and 6 or 7 of that was done already, post PDI run and all that. I'm still finding things out, but overall everything seems okay, except for the tickover's a bit high. It should be plus or minus 50 RPM either side of 1250. It's about 1500 at the moment, but we'll leave that to the first service at 300 miles, the part running in service if you like. Nothing's changed in that respect. It's still 300 miles first service, check the valves, and then the full-on running period is 1250 miles. One thing I've noticed coming here is the mirrors. There's a little bit of buzzing on this one through the mirrors, just a little bit so far. But of course I can only take it up to 3000 RPM. We'll see what happens in the future regarding general running of the bike. But I've put all the bits on that I want to put on, I think at least so far. I've had a right game getting some stainless steel Allen domed head bolts of about 35 to 40 mil long locally. So I've ordered some online. At the moment I've got some zinc bolts in use, and I'll show you what that's all about in a bit. But we've got the screen extension, the Giwi Shield Plus screen extension off Webley Mark I. We've got Webley Mark I's panniers, more on those in a bit. New rails, but they were an issue because apparently, according to the distributor, they don't do the rails separate. You have to buy the kit with the panniers. Well, I didn't want to do that because I've got the panniers, obviously, and all my stickers on. So I didn't want to do that. And fortunately, they've got a damaged set of panniers at the distributor, and they've got the frames, which is still okay, off that set. So I've had them. They cost me 149 quid on their own, which is maybe a bit pricey perhaps, but then again the whole package is like 500 quid with the panniers, so saved a bit there anyway. Protection wise, we've got some new bars, new engine bars from Hitchcock's. These are the 2-point fixing ones. As before, they work out about 108 quid I think, including the VAT. You get 2 bolts and 2 grip washers with them. I'll come on to that in a bit when we get a bit closer up. It's a bit fiddly on your own, purely because you're on your own. You could do with somebody else to help you. So there's the Giwi screen extension. Again, it's the sides, the flared sides, that create most of the noise, and a little bit, not too much buffeting for me, but that's all been done before in previous videos. But it was still in good nick, so I'll put it back on. If you've been watching the Here's Johnny series with my Bullet Trials Works replica, Johnny, you'll see that I've moved the mirrors forward on that to create more room between the grip, on both sides this is, and the base, the stalk of the mirror. Just so it's easier to get to and from the controls, mainly the lever of course, so you don't knock it or anything like that. Now these are higher anyway, but I've done the same. I've moved them forward quite a bit really. They was about here perhaps, something like that, at this position. I've moved them forward. I might move them back about ½ inch actually, we'll see how we get on, but they're alright. I say they do buzz a little bit, just a little bit on this, where Webley Mark I didn't have that. They were solid. They were the best mirrors of the 3 for size, position and lack of vibration. There's a bit there for this one, but then we'll see what happens. Things can smooth out a little bit, and of course they can get worse, but hopefully it won't get any worse. Not that it's a lot, it's just a smidgen. Right, moving back and slightly down, this is the standard seat. We've got a bit of a too soft a seat going on, which is the same with all Himalayans, to be honest. What I've read, what I've experienced with Webley Mark I, which was nearly 7,000 miles. You're alright for short journeys, but I don't like the curved bit here, so I sit a little bit further forward anyway, which makes it worse. And over time it just tends to squidged down and you sort of catch the rails here with your thighs. You can get what is called a touring seat. It's a Royal Enfield accessory. You can't get it direct from your dealers or the distributor in the UK, so it has to come from India generally. You can get them on eBay. Both seats, the pillion and the rider's seat, you can get for about 100 to 120 quid. Normally that's post free, and some people say it doesn't improve things much, but Itchy Boots, if you don't know Itchy Boots, check her out, just Google her or do a search on YouTube. Itchy Boots has done 36,000 kilometres around all sorts of terrain and loads of different countries. I think it's 25, something like that, on her first Himalayan. A new trip's coming up shortly. I've asked her what her thought, because she's got the touring seat fitted already. Has obviously been getting the bike ready for her next adventure, which is Patagonia to Alaska. She says she doesn't know why she never fitted one to her first Himalayan, Basanti. So when I get round to it, I'm going to do that. That's why I haven't fitted the air cushion back to Webley Mark II, because likely as not it's only going to be short trips now. We're nearly into October. The weather's been rubbish. I only had Webley Mark II for about 3 days, and she spent all but about 1 hour in the garage waiting for the weather to get better. Not that I mind getting the bike dirty as such once I've used her a bit, but I don't like cleaning any bike, and I wanted to stay cleanish for at least one trip. So seats for the future, we're going to try that, why not? Still regarding the seat, the first Himalayan Webley Mark I had an issue with this seat, pillion seat, rubbing against the back of the light fitting, the housing there, rubbing the finish a bit, so I'll put some tape there. As you can see, there's quite a good gap though on this one, so I won't have to do that, at least not yet anyway. I tell a lie, there's something else different. This screw here, that's either zinc or stainless on Webley Mark I, or was. Now, I presume black anodised, which I suppose looks better contrast I suppose, if you like contrast. And here, this screw cap fitting, what do you want to call it? Now, this is where your indicators would be normally fitted, the stalks fitting against here. But when you put the frame rails on for the luggage, the indicators get moved back so they can be seen easier. This was the, should we call it a modification? An addition anyway, to Webley Mark I, but when I went to look at Webley Mark II, about a day before she was ready, the original stalks were still on here, or part of the original stalks. Now, from one point of view, that gives you extra holes to hook things on, although you wouldn't be able to put too much load on them. It does look a bit messy though. So I found a photograph eventually of how Webley Mark I was, because I couldn't work out how it was done, and it was a previous employee that did it, and these are off a fairing. They're to fix fairings to bikes or fairing parts together. Don't ask if they've got any more. It's quite a neat solution, but don't ask because they've got none left. Right, a little bit of an issue this afternoon, which is why I'm late out and why the light's fading quite rapidly. It has been known that there's not enough clearance for the clamps that hold the panniers to the rails here, not to have enough clearance at this point here. And this is the case, but just on the right hand side only. Which was, I was a little bit miffed, to be honest. You try and give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and yes, it's a £4,000, well, just over bike, so, you know, you should maybe not expect Beamer 20 grand quality, although you can't really knock it really. It's really decent quality, but should we call this an oversight? Maybe the frames for the luggage are made by hand and not in a jig. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't have a problem myself before, but I did today with this one. Only the one, and there just wasn't enough room for it to clear that bit there by, I don't know, a couple of mil. So even though I nearly cut it at the wrong angle by cutting it at the wrong side to start with, or just a few score marks, and it took ages because you can never find your best tools when you want them, can you? So with a hacksaw that was pretty worn out and probably not that good when it was new, cut off a bit of a slope there, and then using a file just to round the edges off. To be honest, it looks a lot better job anyway. It's not necessary than the squared off ends of the original, but the original design. But yeah, does the job. It clears. It's smooth. It's quite nice. and I haven't lost any strength because of the angle there. Where you want it, there's still plenty of meat there. Right then, engine bars. This is the right hand side. It is a little bit awkward to do on your own. You can do it with normal spanners. It is easier if you've got a ratchet to hand, which I hadn't. And I suppose it's a good thing really if you can do things on a bike like this which can go to places that other bikes can't. Irrespective of what some folks have been saying, well, odd one or two folks have been saying about the frames. This is a good thing if you can do things with basic tools. And let's be honest, we all moan that there's too much electronic gizmos, this, electronic gizmos, that, and things you can't fix without plugging it in and what have you. So this is a good thing. Anyway, Hitchcock's about 106 quid I think it is. I've only gone for the 2-point fixing for two reasons. One is if I have the 3-point fixing one and the larger type as well that stick out quite a way, I will struggle to get it in my garage in a certain position. In other words, I'll be restricted to one way I can get it in the garage, which I don't want to do that. The other thing is, if I come off the bike or drop the bike so hard that it pushes these right into the cases and perhaps breaks the casing of the engine there, then I think the rest of the bike's going to be pretty sick as well. So what? So go for these. That's what I've done. And I've done again. These are the second pair I've bought. Now, thanks to Hitchcock's on the first Himalayan, they put them on for me because I didn't believe you could get at the oil filter housing with them on, or indeed fit them with the exhaust on. Now, there is a way around it for the exhaust, but certainly you can change the oil filter without messing about with the bars. To get them on though, you have to undo the main bolt here, the engine bolt here. This is where it becomes awkward up this end because it's a through bolt to the other side. If you've got two people just to hold the spanner on the other end, then it would make it easier, but you can do it leaning round, hanging down off the top of the bike. This is the most awkward bit though, getting that bolt in there. You can just see, I think. It's about inch and a quarter long. It's provided with the kit. You get the two sides to the engine bars, you get two bolts, two grip washers, so you don't have to use anything like Loctite. Loctite has its uses, but of course sometimes it's a bit awkward getting stuff undone once you've used it. Now, to do this, you don't have to take the exhaust off. You undo the nuts at the top of the engine where the exhaust goes into the head. That gives you enough play to pull the exhaust over this way, enough to get it in. The other thing that makes it awkward, this being a brand new bike, all the paint is quite new and fresh, and there was some paint in the threads down there, in the lug down there, which isn't used, not for anything straight from the factory. Presumably the Royal Enfield engine bars fit in the same location. So what I did first of all was to spray a bit of WD-40 on that bolt, and I just put the bolt in on its own, rather like a tap. Screwed it in, undid it, screwed it in a bit further, undid it, just to get rid of any paint that was in there. Once that was done, it went in easy. It's a bit of a, you need another hand to try and keep the exhaust away. This is the left hand side, and it's much easier without the exhaust being in the way, but there is something in the way, well, just about. The oil line here, there is some flex in it. You can get it out the way, fortunately, but just in case there's any rubbing going on after the mileage gets up a bit, I've put some tape round it there. Same with the clutch cable, which now doesn't go around this side of the frame through this little bracket here. It goes around the right hand side here, and it comes close to the top of the bracket of the engine bar that side, so I put a bit of tape on that as well. This is another Hitchcock's accessory, and it was on Webley Mark I, the heel plate to help protect the rear brake master cylinder. The trouble is, the threads, the nuts that are welded on the back of the bracket for the master cylinder, are a bit further away than Mark I Webley. So the bolts supplied with the kit, which is the plate and two bolts and two spacers, all in stainless, those bolts, which are domed Allen bolts, they're just not quite long enough anymore on this one. Another thing that's the same on this one compared to my first one is that the top thread that you thread into on the bracket isn't very good, and it looks like it's been cross-threaded. So it does hold. That was exactly the same on the first one. It does hold, but I'm looking to get a tap in there and re-tap the thread. It's M6, and I've had such a game trying to get any bolts at all really locally. I was trying to get exactly what I wanted. Domed Allen bolts, so there's less to catch your heel on your boot, or your side of your ankle really there. In the end, after traipsing everywhere, I got some screw cap bolts, but they're a bit thick, although they would have done. The head's a bit deep really. These are about the best I can come up with at the moment locally, and they're zinc plated from Screwfix. I had to buy 100 of them. There's, what was it, £3, £2.99, something like that, £3.99 for 100. They're a bit too long, a shade too long. Not that it matters, because they're not going to rub on anything on the back, although if you get the threads dirty and eventually rusty if I stick with these, which I'm hoping not to, it might be awkward to get out. But there's a spring washer on there as well as a normal washer. The spring washer, of course, is there to help them stop vibrate loose, which I never had the problem before. I have ordered some stainless ones though, of the correct type. Right, whilst we're down here, let's have a look at the brake lever. This was sticking out a bit too much for my liking, and it meant, although it was easy to get at, it was a bit awkward just having your foot on at an odd angle right at the end of the footrest, foot peg there. What I've done, I've adjusted that. I bet you can't guess how I adjusted it. Sometime last year, I forget when it was, there were a few issues apparently with the oil temperature sensor, which sends temperature information back to the ECU, and apparently that can cause issues with bad running if it's not working correctly. This is an upgraded one, and there's a reason why we was waiting for Webley Mark II for another day. So there you go folks, Webley Mark II, very similar to Webley Mark I and all the other Himalayans going around, and there's quite a few of them. Very popular, although the twins are probably beating it now for popularity, not for what it can do though. That's it for now, see you again.